Now, Christianity has its 13th apostle, a faithful witness to the love, mercy, and truth of Jesus Christ. How about you? Will you be the 13th apostle?
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of the 13th Apostle, where we explore the good, the beautiful, and the true of the Catholic faith and the Catholic Church. This is Tom Caffrey with my co-host, Dan Duddy. Hey, Dan.
Hey, Tom. How are you?
All right. So, we touched upon this at the end of last episode with what's going on, the war in the Middle East. And, well, it's between Israel and Hamas. And since Hamas controls Gaza, and the chaos is reigning and bombs are raining in Gaza, it's, I guess, Israel versus Hamas and Gaza. And I guess like every war, it's a mess. We've got brothers and sisters in faith over there. That was specifically with Holy Family Parish in Gaza City. It's the last Roman Catholic parish in Gaza. Pretty tough going over there.
Yeah, it's beyond complicated, and in my earlier days of my life, living in the conflicts that we heard over there, I would just really hear, the geographical areas, getting into the complications of the politics and the hatred going all through my life, and the different wars and bombings and so forth that have happened. I would hear Gaza Strip, and I would hear the West Bank, and Israel, and the adjoining countries that bordered Israel. Whether they were coming in or not, and who was supporting who. But this is probably because more so of my age now and less distractions with other things. This is really alarming, the atrocities and just this flagrant bombing that's happening, civilian centers being brought down, hospitals, children, youngsters getting kidnapped, the alleged rapes and so forth. It's when you couple all of that with what's going on in our country. Now, what does that mean? I don't know what's going on in our country, quite honestly, but I have a distrust in the news, and I don't know what our country's actually thinking, or if I have the confidence in decisions that would affect or that would enter into such a volatile situation. So, it's so volatile over there, and it's just so tenuous. Is it something that you stay away from, or is it something that you enter into? And my goodness, I'm repeating myself, but you're jumping into just this chaotic melting pot of who knows who is for who, and what the heck's going on here. Plus, it's such a personal war over there, right, Tom? I mean, it's really such a personal battle and hatred amongst the Palestinians and the Israelis for eons over territories. And you had suggested this conversation here tonight in light of Christians, and not just Christians, but of course we have a Catholic radio show. We have such a small percentage of Christians over there, but yet what I'm reading is, and you mentioned the parish, that they're joining up with these, good Muslims who are suffering, innocent Muslims who are suffering, families, which makes up over 90% of the population, in Catholic churches, and finding shelter there. I read, and you just mentioned a particular parish, and I read that Gaza's oldest church is housing Muslims and Catholics alike into common prayer and shelter. So,
indeed,
yeah,
Yeah, it's the pastor's Father Gabriel Romanelli. He happens to be Argentinian, uh, and I know that he's been in communication with Pope Francis, a fellow Argentinian, and the sisters in that parish, the Rosary Sisters of Jerusalem. They work with Caritas International. Caritas has a fair number. I think it's probably maybe a dozen, at least a dozen, and perhaps more of centers where people of all faiths are going for medical care. This is incomprehensible to us for a number of reasons. I can't imagine being the only Catholic parish in New Jersey, let's say, and we're 1,000. Because I think I don't know the figure I kept reading. The number of Christians was it wasn't much over 1,000 in different sources. Now that's so I don't know, like you said in the beginning, we don't know exactly what's true, but you talk about great witnessing. There's this Catholic parish, the Muslims and the non-Catholics. I mean, they know this is like their only refuge, and you think that you want to hope that that's a witness to those people. It's almost like what we've talked about with the early Christians in that area of the world, who were dealing. Okay, the enemy was Rome and the Roman occupiers and oppressors, and then when plagues and other conflicts would break out, the Christians stayed and they ministered to the people. And I wonder, it's depending on what year you're talking about. There, at one time, there was the same number. If we want to say, okay, well, it started with 1, grew to 12, and then it just kept growing. But at one time, there was probably the same number of Christians in the Holy Land and in its environs as there is in the Gaza Strip right now.
That's true.
It's unbelievable.
Go ahead. Yeah, and what's noteworthy once again is, I believe it's less than 2% of the population of the Gaza Strip are Christians. How many of those are Catholics? I don't know. But you're mentioning, just a small number of churches, which is understandable based on the amount of, population. I think the Gaza Strip has 2.5 billion people. And
yeah.
You just mentioned how many Christians are in that count, and that's unbelievable. But what once again is cool about this is that the news is covering a level of embracing going on between the good people, and I'm only saying, and there's good people everywhere, of course, but I'm just getting the news from the Gaza Strip and how they've huddled up. And at St. Porphyrius, I've never said his name before, but I'm assuming that's how it's said, church, which is the oldest church in Gaza. What's enlightening to me and revealing to me, and we can only talk personal here because no one knows what the heck's going on, so we can only get real about how we feel about this. Is when I look at the map of Israel, I see Jerusalem, I see Bethlehem, and I can think back about our Lord's days and how he went into this unbelievable chaos, not unlike what we're seeing here, but we didn't have these wars back then. There were other kinds of wars going on, and how he walked in there into the fray, like he knew why he was, and he acted upon who and why he was, and men followed him right to it, and men went into Jerusalem and beyond and were martyred for it in the same type of chaos. But what do we do as Catholics in a situation where it's just so overwhelming and we're just such a small population of what's going on, other than get into a bomb shelter position like we used to do in second, third grade at St. Peter's and Point Pleasant Beach? We used to have bomb raids. What is that we can do? Well, what I see is a whole lot of praying going on this side in our nation. It's beautiful, hundreds of thousands of people marching through New York City. I don't know if you got a chance to see that, Tom. But the clergy and the lay people, they took over the city with a march, but it never hit the news. So, and there's national prayer all over through our Catholic Church this evening, in fact. here on a Tuesday night.
Yeah, I got notice of that for my parish. Yeah, I think it's usual in situations like this. It's prayer, and for those who have the resources, there's no shortage of donation requests in the Holy Land, in Gaza, and certainly the Caritas International. They've been asking for donations. For a lot of people, that's all there is. That's their only hope for. I mean, just think of. I don't know. I can't comprehend what it's like to have a bomb drop near me. I can only. I've shared this with some people. I guess about a month or two ago, I fired my shotgun for the first time. Now I've had that shotgun for 10 years, and I finally I thought it's time that I know how to handle this, and I put that in quotes that I know how to handle it because I know the rudimentary aspects of it. But I will never forget the first feeling of the first shot and how I just reverberated throughout my body. And I had double ear protection on, and I still felt a little ringing in my ear. And I immediately thought, what must it be like to be in war when you have a bomb?
Yeah.
And we're flesh, bones, and we a shotgun would rip somebody apart. Forget about a bomb, And so but what I want to do is I want to put a little context with this, and go back in history a little bit to World War II, and the whole moral aspect of warfare and bombing, particularly bombing. And so you look at
reckless bombing here. I think it's very important that we say this is reckless bombing, which makes it worse. There's no confidence whatsoever in who's pointing those bombs because they're breaking all rules of warfare. No, go ahead.
Well, please. Yeah, I'm not sure I agree with that, or at least I think I agree with. I agree with. I'm going to say that we don't know.
We don't know.
I mean, I do think there's some, like I think today or yesterday was a hospital that was hit. Right. The argument, you talk about not being able to trust the certainty of the news that we get. If somebody's saying, well, Hamas has embedded themselves in hospitals, in schools, and telling their citizens not to leave. So,
human shields. And
we don't know. I mean, I've heard that over and over again. I don't have any proof of that. But you take World War II, the bombing of Dresden, Germany. That was, I believe that was 2 days. It's 25. The estimates range from 25,000 to over 250,000 dead with the bombing in Dresden. And they use terms like obliteration bombing, terror bombing. In Tokyo, and there was a movie, I believe, I remember 30 Seconds Over Tokyo. Now, what I'm talking about was more than 30 seconds, but I believe it was only a day. And it flattened 16 square miles, 100,000 dead, 1 million homeless. This is in a day or two with both of these examples. And I have a quote here from Winston Churchill, who was originally against terror bombing, obliteration bombing. But as things unfolded, and this is what happens, our dear friend Jim Mulvihill, a frequent guest on our program, is a combat veteran, and I know he's told me that once the snap of a round, once it goes past your head, the plans can change pretty quickly or do. And Churchill, it says here, when they changed the policy to obliteration and terror bombing against Germany, Churchill no longer condemned this quote-unquote odious form of warfare and promised the House of Commons on June 2nd, 1942, that Germany was to be subjected to an, quote, ordeal the like of which has never been experienced by any country, close quote. The systematic shattering of German cities. There are no sacrifices we will not make, no lengths in violence to which we will not go.
Wow.
Our plans are to bomb, burn, and ruthlessly destroy in every way available to us the people responsible for creating the war. So, you've got, you can't, typically you can't use one thing to justify another thing if one thing is definitely immoral. And this, of course, is it gets to the bombing of the nuclear bombs we dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. The argument is, okay, well, that ended the war. So, Israel says, well, wait a second, if you do a proportion of the number of people that were killed to 1,300 people that were murdered by Hamas, I believe that's around 45,000 U.S. citizens in 9/11, as opposed to the 3,000 plus. I think in England it was like 8 or 10,000, the equivalent of what was of those, the number that were murdered in Israel. So, we become different in how we think of things, and we maybe we forget about or don't know about history and how we waged war. And does Israel's bombing, does that stop Hamas, or does that bring in these other groups, Hezbollah, both of Hamas and Hezbollah, funded by Iran, sponsored by Iran? Does it bring Iran in? The Chinese and Russians are helping out? So this is big stuff that we're facing right now.
Yeah, wow, it's a good point. I didn't know that about Churchill, and man, those words were venomous. And I'm not judging him by any means, because I'm not in that position as a leader. And to be, we've dodged those, no pun intended, those bullets for the most part in our life as being men who could go off to war. I missed the Vietnam War. Jimmy Mulvihill's got some amazing stories about humanity, and yeah, that whole point. One bullet goes by your head, one round goes past your ear, and you got a whole different attitude. That's pretty much what the leader Churchill was pretty much saying on a much grander scale. The just war theory, I guess, it has some loose boundaries to it, because you can go beyond and say, I can see it. I would never. I'm not saying I agree with it, but I can see and understand just war theory having some flexibility, saying, look, I know, we don't believe in, mass killings and nuclear bombs, but there are going to be more people dying, and this is going to spread across the world if something isn't punched in the mouth. And God help me for even saying that. I can't believe I'm even saying that, but that's the truth of war. It's the truth of what we're looking at. We have to make decisions as men, and they're extremely difficult decisions. But when women and children are at stake, I think that men as leaders, providers, and protectors, then there's a just war theory involved in that alone. If it's proven that women and children are at stake or being held as human shields, if it's proven, then I think things get justified, things get tough. You know what I mean? Then the sleeves get rolled up.
Yeah, well, that and I know you're not making policy here. What you just said is like, okay, well, when the bullets are flying, when the bombs are dropping, how do we determine, in the quote unquote fog of war, how do we determine that, they are in fact hiding behind their children? To determine that, I mean, it's, the Geneva Convention started because of all the violence and what had happened after the Second World War, and I think that these are wrestling matches that go inside each person's head and their conscience, and then in groups of people. Let's say you and I are in a war room and we're going back and forth to say, okay, well, our faith teaches and natural law teaches you can't do an evil to get a good.
Right.
But then we have to say, well, we have to define those terms. Is it a good to stop a bigger evil?
Right. Yes. So that's a point to be made on the grand scheme, and that goes all the way back to the World War II decisions that were made. But if we go back to Israel versus Palestine and what's happening in Gaza Strip and so on, they refer to that. I think the Gaza Strip is referred to as an open air prison. And we have Christians that I read their quotes today, who are saying, yes, Hamas is violent, vile and violent, but they've been pushed to it by Israel to behave such way, because we've been cornered in the Gaza Strip, 2 million people as an open air prison. But these people, there's no place for any of them to take refuge if they wanted to, because the adjoining countries have pretty much washed their hands of them, from what I can see. So it appears to me that this whole mess in Israel, the West Bank, and the Gaza Strip, the Israeli territory and the Palestinian territories, even though I think the West Bank is controlled police state-wise with Israelis, the whole place is an open-air prison. And I don't know if they're just going to self-destruct in their war. I don't know if any muscle countries are going to jump in there, and why would they jump in there? So it's horrible, but it remains to be seen. And truly, the only thing we can do that I can see is pray.
Yeah, I mean,
they're going to get out, Tom. I don't know how they're going to get out.
Well, they have. I just read something in the news today that some deal is being brokered. I don't know whether it's been brokered about opening a passage for those who want to get out, working something out with Egypt, which has to up until maybe just before this report was saying no, we're not going to let them in, let the Palestinians in. It's everybody knows it's right so there, complicated. Well, yeah, but would you want? But you want 2 million coming in? I mean, do you want you're the president of Egypt? Do you want 2 million people, 500,000, a million, whatever, coming in, pouring into your place?
I don't know,
and you don't know how many of them might be Hamas.
Well, that's true too. That's very much true, and this goes back to our wall, our southern borders. We don't know how many of those people are terrorists that are jumping the wall. But I mean, if Egypt could get them out of the country, look, I don't know anything, and just have them take a right, go right into the Mediterranean Sea and get on boats and go somewhere. I don't know, but you're on the border. You got to help these people out, or maybe ships can come out to the because it's a coastline territory, the Gaza Strip, and get these people on boats and out. But once again, Hamas can jump on those boats with you. How are they ever identified? So it's a tough spot, brother.
We know a lot more now than in World War II, World War I. I think this is unique in maybe more than one way. But what I'm thinking now is, Germany, the Nazis wanted to exterminate a race. There's a similarity with what Hamas and I think and Hezbollah and perhaps Iran, I don't think it's perhaps Iran, would ideally like to exterminate the Jews and eliminate a country called Israel. And this the saying that is being chanted in the U.S., in London, in Sydney, elsewhere, saying from the river to the sea, something like let the Palestinians be free or something like that. And what that means, talking about from the Jordan River, the Mediterranean, that means no Israel.
Right across the country to the Mediterranean. Jordan's on the east side. I'm sorry, straight across west of the Mediterranean. They just want to flush them out.
Yeah. So when you're committed in your charter as a nation or a political state, the dissolution, the extermination of another state, it's
incredible.
Wow, this is
incredible.
Such a big problem.
Spot.
In the supposedly the holiest of places for the three Abrahamic religions.
Yep.
It's so tragic. What is? I don't know. All right, well, listen. We don't have any answers. Of course, we don't, other than pray. And as I said, to donate. We try to get Father Romanelli on for this episode. Who's not available. We're going to keep trying. And there's also a couple other parishioners whose contact information I was given. So we're going to try to get them on for a conversation, hopefully the next episode. But
maybe we could forward to Jim and put it in our notes, some contact information too, so that it's on our website, on the WQPH website too. And I think it's important to tell our people on the air that can go into our show notes when it gets posted.
I can tell with the context of what you just said that you're referring to James Gilbert.
Yeah,
our
James.
stalwart colleague. Well, you said Jim, so we were talking about Jim Mulvihill.
Yeah, Jim. Sorry.
We're going to give him,
James.
I think we just gave Mulvihill 3 credits, and I just said his last name, so that's 4 credits. You just can't.
He deserves it.
Yeah. Oh, man, you're a politician. You should try to solve this problem the way
Jim
you talk.
Jim deserves credits that we don't even know about.
Oh, stop. You don't have to live so close to him as I do. I got to deal with him pretty regularly. It's so easy. You're such a distance from all these things. You don't care.
Jim, you're getting plenary indulgences living so close to Tom.
Oh, gosh. All right, Danny, what's coming up next?
All right. Stay tuned, folks, for the Angelus First and your prayer intentions with Peter and Jemmy. Thanks.
And let those intentions be for Father Romanelli and Holy Family Parish, the Catholics, the Christians, the Muslims, all of God's children. And maybe one day, we'll see.
Amen.
All right. Thank you, Marianne, Jean, James, Tom, and all the crew. God bless you, Danny.
God bless you, Tom. God bless you all. Let's continue with our prayers.
Amen, brother.
You are listening to WQPH 89.3 FM Shirley, Fitchburg. And now a word from author Peter and Jemmy, who is the host of Your Prayer Intentions, taking place every Saturday at 12:30 p.m.
Whether you're donating money or giving us prayers, without you, we don't go on. And if you do want to help us go on, please consider going to WQPHradio.org. There's a donate button there. You can give once, you can give monthly, and it makes a difference. It keeps all of our shows, and we have a great lineup of shows, keeps us going. And whether you're a fan of Your Prayer Intentions, whether you like Steve's show, Benedict's Harris Sundays at midnight, whether you like Brother Matthew and Brother Anthony from the Housetops, which is on Sundays 10:30 a.m. and 4 p.m., whether you're a fan of the Children's Rosary, which we have every day at 5 p.m., 7 days a week, whether you like our Local Matters show, which is Saturday at 11, or Talk Catholic, which comes right after us at 12:30. Larry's Music Off, Sunday at 11 a.m. We have the Shepherd's Pie Saturdays at 1 p.m. Or Dan and Tom with the 13th Apostle, which comes just before us at 11:30. Any of those shows and all the stuff you donate, you help these things come out. But what also at the WQPH website, in addition to podcasts of our shows, is the prayer wall.
Right on the prayer wall, support WQPH and get WQPH 24 hours a day, 7 days a week on WQPHradio.org.
Thank you for listening to the 13th Apostle with Dan Duddy and Tom Caffrey. For more information on Dan, visit his website at www.danduddy.com or email dcduddy@gmail.com. Tom's website is faithpilgrims.com or email trcaffrey@faithpilgrims.com. How about you? Will you be the 13th Apostle?